Hey everyone, just wanted to give you a warning before this episode. The sensitive topics, including suicide and self harm. And so I'm encouraging people to seek help if they are in a crisis. In the US, by dialing 988 or texting HOME to 741 741. Again, that's by dialing 988 or texting HOME to 741 741.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels. I don't even know how to do the intro to this episode. A couple of times already, and Megan was there for one, Psychocomicolgy, Dr. Ramos and Samantha Chavez were there for the other and missed the second. We've used 22 panels to do what we call comics for empathy, understanding, and change. Um, Recently, a member of the comic community went through something that I know too well, and it's just devastating. When she lost her brother to suicide, um, and in his memory, his honor, she's donating the proceeds to what also happens to be a devastatingly beautiful book about mental health. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth to suicide awareness and prevention organizations through the end of the year. And when I saw that, I said, I've been wanting to do an episode about this, whatever we want to call this. It's kind of a big thing or a little, I don't even know what to call it. So I'm going to start reaching out to the people that I think are going to be good voices and see who's available, see who's up to it. And we'll start by talking about It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth, um, and see where we go from there. Because mental health is something that I feel like every time I turn around, somebody is blaming something on mental health, but nobody likes to talk about mental health. Um, and I think it's important. Um, it's something that's come up in conversations with everybody that's on this call. It came up significantly when we were talking to Jim Terry about Come Home India, which I made me know that Megan was somebody to reach out to. I've got Katie Avila here, who's the volunteer
Yep.
coordinator for comics cartoons Crossroads Columbus.
Yeah,
Who
I was gonna
yeah,
say,
we wound up talking about our therapists in a bar while doing karaoke. So
yeah,
you know,
that's my kind of party. So my friends would be
yeah,
like,
me too.
of
I mean,
course, like,
somebody who's so unashamed of their own need for assistance that they can wind up talking about it with you at a bar doing karaoke when you're having a good time, not because you're having a bad time, not because they're having a bad time, but because it came up in conversation and like wasn't off limits.
yeah,
Um, was somebody that I knew should be in on this. Bryce is a behavior therapist specialist, and as I work in special ed too, we've been known to occasionally send each other messages like, "Are your kids doing okay? My kids seem to be having a hard time this year."
Yeah.
Um, and Dr. Ramos and Samantha have built their practice around assisting with trauma and using comic books to do so. So they're obviously my go-to anytime I decide I want to have a mental health conversation in comics. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and drink some coffee and let somebody else take the ball for a second, just because I think I'm going to break up if I don't. So please, somebody, anybody, if I have to point at people, I will.
I mean, I could start if you like. I mean,
Thank
I
you,
did,
Doctor.
I did Google some dad jokes, but I don't know which one would be appropriate at the time. So I'll just reference the book. So I did take a read of it. I hadn't read it before. interestingly, my LCS, my local comic shop guy, over at Beyond Tomorrow here in Palatine, we were talking about it, and he kind of prefaced Zoe Thorogood as the like the it writer of the Generation Z, and it was like,
Yeah.
ah, okay, I'm like, that's pretty cool. I go, let me see what else is out there, whatnot. But uh, have mentioned. It's interesting because I had a lot of stuff running through my head, a lot of stuff running through my head. Um, I read it as someone that's just likes comics, and then I read it as a clinician, and I have two very differing positions as a comic reader and then as a clinician.
Oh, it's really interesting.
So I'll speak to the one. So I'll speak more to, well, first as the reader, just a comic book reader. So I thought it was cool. Like I read it, I'm like, holy cow! Like, this individual is going through her depression and what she's doing, dealing with the depression, and like page 3, and I don't have it in front of me. It it shocked me when she's like, and I'm gonna shoot my effing self. Like it's like what like what's going on? Like it was powerful. I could say like it's a strong read. It's a very strong read. And for that I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it very much. As mentioned, a little bit different take on it. And I'm open to have a dialogue. And again, this is just it's funny because I have to wear these two hats. It was very, and I hate to use the word because it's kind of this hot word now, this meta. Like I found it very difficult for I think the average individual to read, and it niched people like it'll reach certain people, but it wasn't for the average kid who's depressed. If I gave it to like my population and they read it, it wouldn't grasp. It would be like no, it would just toss aside. So it's very niched in that, which is kudos to her writing, but also like it's cautionary in that I wouldn't always recommend it to everybody, to every adolescent or whatnot. So that was one thing. My second kind of take on it was I like that they they had their typical like, hey, if you need help, reach out. But I didn't see treatment. Like, is she in therapy? Is she working through therapy? Like, what is she doing therapeutically? And that scared me because it's like, I want to
Hmm.
be careful when we talk about like all these for mental health. It's we have to create a different dialogue or different word for it. Books for mental health or books that reference mental health. I know like Tom King's Mr. Miracle is great about PTSD, but it's not really, we don't talk about it like it's for mental health. So I kind of am taking from that a little bit like we got to be careful about, is it a book for mental health or is it a book about someone's mental health,
Hmm.
which is two different things. And so clinically, I look at it, it's a book about someone's mental health. I wouldn't say it's a book about mental health because it doesn't really teach an individual about treatment and all that. It's a little bit very cognitive. I think that was my initial
No,
take, and
that's
I read it one time quick, like, all right, let me read it. Uh, I had to read my Transformers too that night. I had to get both of them done. So let me read these both really quickly here. But I ended up reading it all in one night. Like, all right, like I couldn't put it down. Like, all right, let me read it. Let me see what it is. So that's my immediate thoughts. All right, go.
no, and I think
Go.
that's completely fair because I know that I don't look at it as like this is what to do, where I feel this book is like, and you made me really wonder how I would have taken it as a like 18 or 20-year-old reading it. Because my
Hmm.
initial reading was, oh, I wish I'd had this book when I was 18 or 20. But as I listen to you now, I wonder if I'd had this at 18 or 20, would I have felt as seen as I do now? Or would I have just felt, oh, the world is hopeless. Here, this talented person is still going through this. Um, I am 99% certain that she is in therapy now. I was going through the end of the book to try to find it and don't see it specifically there, so I might have seen it on her Instagram. I know that like she speaks for organizations and groups. But you're right. As
I
I'm
looked her
as
up.
I'm flipping through, it doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't really deal with that. Um, which also is the way, I mean, the first suicide attempt I remember making, I was 12. I went into the hospital when I was 14 because I put myself there. You know, my family managed to not notice my attempts. Admittedly, they weren't great attempts. We didn't have any guns in the house. I wasn't like, I didn't get into cutting on my arms until later, and that was more a therapeutic thing than a attempt to hurt thing. Does that make sense? Therapeutic self-harm,
Yeah.
I think, is even the term.
Yeah, that's a popular way to disassociate from your whatever's bothering you.
Yeah. Not one I recommend. I'm
Nope.
very happy that I do not do it again,
Not high on the
do it
list.
anymore. For that matter, I am probably, well, probably not the only person, but I had my therapist, like, I remember I was like 19 and I just started smoking. I was telling him about my week, and I'd say, and I'd have a cigarette, and it's at one point he'd go, okay, every time I've heard you say you had a cigarette, 6 months ago, you would have been cutting your arms. So I'm going to call this progress. If you think if 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, whatever, smoking's a problem and you want me to help you quit, I'll help you quit.
It's the lesser of two evils at that
But
point.
for right now, stop beating yourself up about having a cigarette. Also, not advising smoking to the people out there, but I mean, sometimes it is the lesser of evils, you
Absolutely.
know? And that's one of the fascinating things for me in this book is watching the ways she sometimes effectively and sometimes less effectively finds what am I looking for? Self-calming, self-soothing, self-reflective ways. I mean, again, dear God, I hope she has a therapist now. I assume she has a therapist now. I'm 99% certain she has a therapist now. But I also know how hard it is for people to decide that they need that.
Absolutely. If I could throw something, so
Please.
again, I was talking to my comic shop guy. I'll just call him Josh from here. And we were talking about the book, and I had told him how I felt, and he was like, you know what? He's like when he read it, he's like, I was more worried about her. He's like, I hope she doesn't commit suicide.
Yeah.
And it kind of threw me back. Like, more, I was worried and concerned about her.
Edgar, can you get a little
I know
closer
I
to your
don't
mic?
look, but I'm a 50-year-old man, so maybe it's a little odd. But when he was telling that, he like his immediate thought was, I hope she doesn't kill herself.
Yeah.
I was like, that's funny. I'm like, because my concern reading it was worry, like oh man, I hope she's okay. Like I hope she's gonna be okay. And I'm like, all right, but I'm 50. How would a 15-year-old read that or
Right.
interpret that? Like, because I was worried. Like, I was generally like, I hope she's okay. And our comic book guy is he used to be a spec ed a person years ago, and his immediate thought was, I hope she doesn't kill herself. And it got me thinking as we left that night. I'm like, huh, like that's what we thought about. Like, like it's I don't know, it's a book. I think that's what it does is that it gets you to think and feel, which is amazing. But again, I'm torn with this vacillation of how I read it, and it's that's the I think the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Edgar, I
I'm
want
gonna
to
go
ask
get
you a question.
my
I really liked that you had said, here, I wrote this down, books about mental health versus somebody's experience of mental health. Like, what books do you recommend out when you say books about mental health?
That's a great question. So I have a colleague, Dr. O'Connor. I don't know if anyone have heard of Dr. O'Connor. Um, he has come up with, and I believe it was part of his dissertation. Don't quote me on that. He's got a site developed, and he works over at our practice as well, called Comicspedia. And essentially, it's a list of all comics that deal with or reference mental health in the issue that, pertain to specific mental health topics. And I think it's really good. Obviously, there's going to be some better than others or whatever. That's just the name of the game. Uh, but it's a database essentially of comics and stuff that are for mental health. I don't know if that answered that
Except that
question.
right now I'm getting an error page when I go to his curriculum vitae. There's the database though. There we go.
Got it?
Yeah.
So we presented nationally over at Comic Cons with Langley. He does a lot of outreach in gaming, therapeutic gaming. So he hosts a lot of therapeutic gaming for kids out here. We're trying to get one going out in Palatine. So he's really that's his niche area, but his database is pretty good.
Yeah, it looks very interesting. Comicspedia.net has,
It's a .net. Okay.
yeah. Online database of hundreds of individual comic book summaries. Each summary is tagged with psychological themes that can aid in selecting specific books to read with others who identify in those themes, which can lead to stronger relationships. It's like they're alphabetical by main character, by themes, and by demographics.
So he has a little time on his hands. Let me just say that.
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any updates since 2013. He's behind, man.
Oh well.
Also,
I'm gonna text him.
Yeah.
it also reminds me of is anybody familiar with the website Graphic Medicine? They do kind of the similar thing where they do it's anything within, I guess, the graphic medicine realm and all of its different offshoots. And I mean, they'll talk about like cancer treatment, depression, all kinds of different stuff. But they've done that where they've created a database and they'll do different reviews. So if you're kind of browsing around for a book, you can search by whatever topic you're looking for or kind of stumble upon different things. I did go
It's
to
called
Graphic Medicine.
Graphicmedicine.org.
Yes, .org. And they do have a conference. They just had one, I think, this summer in Ireland. It bounces around. I went to the one in Chicago a few years ago, and it was amazing. And what was really interesting is that a lot of the attendees were doctors, nurses, librarians was another big one. But like to find another artist was like there was only a handful of us there, which I thought was really interesting. And they had like different lectures that went on from different people doing presentations, and it was really, really interesting, and I highly recommend if you're able to check it out to definitely do that. But it's another place of people telling very sad stories and everybody eager to talk about those stories with complete understanding.
Yeah, she wasn't able to join us tonight, but Kara Bean recently did a book called I Am Here, or Here I Am Me, that is like a YA guide to mental health that I definitely hope that I can talk to Psychocomicolgy about at some point, because I'd like to get their take. I know that I talked to her. She was on recently, and she worked really hard with various mental health professionals because her background was that she was an art teacher and she just saw so many of her kids having similar issues to her having, and she'd work it out through cartooning, and then one mini comic became a floppy comic, became, hey, you want to turn that into a graphic novel? And yeah, Bryce is like, I want that to be the way my comics go.
Absolutely.
I think one of the strong suits in this read was the illustrations and like how she decided to like tell her story through the illustration and not only just the words that she was writing. Um, as like a provider that helps kids work through their traumas and work through depression, and as well as somebody who has gone through their own, mental health issues, the images that were always striking me was that, when she would be doing something in her daily life, and the image that she chose for her depression was always somewhere in like the
Right.
background, or it was looming somewhere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I love that word looming. It was definitely always looming. I think
Mhm.
that's a strong take. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like it never you can go through your daily life and go get a coffee, go to the store, go to the park, do whatever you have to do, but it's always there. Like it's never truly leaving you, even when you're doing things that you're enjoying. So I think it was very strong that she, when I work with kids, I always tell them like, let's draw this out. Let's create, what this feeling is for you, so that you almost have like a face to the name, so that
Hmm.
you have something that you can confront. And so her, face that she chose for her depression was striking. But I think it was very just representing of the fact that it's always there. Um, and I enjoyed seeing that in, the graphic novel form.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
did appreciate that she's got like 4 or 5 different versions of herself too.
Yep.
She's got the like blank face. She's got the adult, the teenager, the almost chibi-ish, um, kid. But then the kid can also be the one with the glasses that's
Mhm.
like more hiding from, yeah, I don't even know entirely what I'm saying, as much as I can so relate to the different ways she idealizes or
Or
ideate.
or she's a worm, a literal worm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I also, I don't know, there's a couple of different things I'm thinking. It's definitely interesting because my depression definitely hit when, I don't know, when I was 13. And so it's kind of been something that's been in and out of my life. And so thinking about what you're talking about earlier, Edgar, as far as how I read this as an adult at 40 right now, and then how I would have read it like at 13, 15, 17. And I didn't really get into comics until my late 20s. And so even just to have that medium, I don't know, it's really interesting. It's like I want to go back and read it with that in mind. It's like I'll just go read it a third time, it'll be fine. But I think that's really interesting. But one of the things, so I don't know how I would have taken this in if I would have found it more anxiety inducing, or if it would have been comforting in a way of like, okay, somebody else has these thoughts, somebody else has this language. um but and so that I'm not sure, and that'll take me some time to really think about, and I think that's a really interesting question. But I absolutely love the visuals of this. I love that it jumps around to different styles, and I think the for me one of the strongest suits of the book is just to, I think, capture these different moments, whether it's like an anxiety or kind of an erratic feeling, like being able to jump around these different styles. I think she really nails it. There's just kind of that different language where it's like you can write about it, but it's like for somebody to be able to put that in some visual way, in a way you didn't expect, it just kind of hits hard. It hits home a little bit harder. But I really liked her style of how she went about it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the art was, and you said the word looming. The way she draws her depression, I think is what's, nothing short of profound. Because that's how I use it in therapeutically is If I had a kid that was 15 going through it, I would have him read it as I guide him through the read
Hmm.
of it to make sure, things are going safe. But it's the tact that I would use is go, hey, if you couldn't use language and you had to draw how you feel, you draw your depression, how would it look? And I would have him
Hmm.
draw a picture for me. And then that's how you start to kind of formulate and how would you fight it? Like so they can actually put it on paper and it becomes tangible for them to be able to say, I could see it. I know what I'm fighting. Because usually I feel this way, but I don't. It's nowhere here, nowhere on. Visual. I'm shaking my head all about because it's not around us. It's just in this. It's in, and it's hard to put somewhere. So I think it's kind of like a heart pain, like why we cut or whatnot because we want to alleviate that inner pain. And obviously, I'm very psychodynamically trained. Depression is anger turned inward. So and what is anger? Anger is pain and fear. So it's a chronic pain that we're dealing with. Interesting enough when you think of like the medications for it. What are the meds? They're tranquilizers. They're pain meds. So you're treating the pain, of depression essentially. So if you could put that pain on paper instead of putting it on your arm or putting it in a bottle or putting it in a drug, it'll help you combat it and fight it better. And I think that's what she does like very well is that she has it looming throughout her book at different stages of her life. Like she can see it. So, I want to, at least I come out reading it saying, she's gonna win this fight because she knows what it is, she knows what it looks like, and she can fight it. And that's where I would really take it is, for kids to go, hey, find what it looks like. Because if you can see it and you know what it looks like, you can fight it. So
Hmm.
that's what I found profound.
Hey,
Thorogood. Thorogood's a superb illustrator. I mean, it feels, and I was not familiar with her work before this book, but it feels like she could do anything in any style, from the most cartoonish to the most realistic. And that adds a lot of power to the book for me and how I took it in. It 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 made you feel through that art what she was going through, even without the words, the way she expresses her struggles with depression, with suicidal thoughts, through all those different ways, through all those different points in her life, and how it kind of toward the end culminates in that page where it's like stripes of her and it's like a different art styles in each section of her body. It had a visceral impact on me, that
yeah.
aspect of the book. And then, images are staying with me, like what we were talking about earlier, what people were talking about earlier about the looming depression, the bit where she's in the car with her parents, in the van with her parents, and the depression is literally hanging on to the back of the vehicle. So really powerful image. The other image that sticks with me as an educator is when she is in school and there are all these girls who are attempting suicide or have killed themselves.
Right.
She goes to the head teacher with her concern about a high rate of suicide attempts in her community, a pretty reasonable concern. And she encounters one of those people in education that I can definitely say exist. That what the head teacher says to her is, oh, of course, at this age, a certain amount of young girls are going to kill themselves statistically. And the way, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say the only thing that would have made it more real to me is if there was a mention of social media.
Yeah. And the way that she draws that page, the head teacher is imperious and monstrous and cold. It's very, it's different from some of the other styles in the book. And that, again, that illustration is the way I feel when I've encountered those kinds of people in my education career.
Yeah.
People that have no business being around children because the damage they can do.
Yeah.
And with just a moment like that, the huge damage you can do to another human being when they're in that developmental stage. And anyway, that part to me, from my personal background, was really powerful.
And I think we've talked about this once or twice before, but have you ever noticed that like massive numbers of educators, I don't want to paint educators as bad because most of us are incredibly aware of this and try as hard as we can. But even among people who try really hard, particularly when it gets into like serious depression, I notice that everybody wants to go to the current pop solution. That's why I brought up social media and why I thought it was really, considering that Zoe is Gen Z. You know what's completely missing from this book?
Yeah.
There's like no social media in here. There's like no social media in here. She's got a cell phone. There's some texting here and there. There's some indication in a couple of places that, oh, you know, this went up on Instagram or whatnot, but it's not the cause of her depression. That's absolutely been something that's been, I feel like as a nation, this is the year that we've decided to take everybody's phone away because that will magically fix a problem that existed before phones. Have you seen that?
There was
I mean,
depression
we're in
before
different
phones?
states, Bryce. What?
Oh yeah, no, we took
There was
away
depression
phones for the first time this year.
Yeah.
This was the first time we've said no cell phones at school. You know, it helps a little bit on site, but it doesn't help their whole lives because the social media is just as destructive after school as it is during school, and they come in every morning with
well, but I'll also use the
anger at what happened on social media the night before.
But I'll also use the counter argument. I don't think our kids are I think we project ourselves onto our kids when it comes to social media because they've grown up with social media. I think they take it differently. I'm not saying that there aren't kids that are profoundly affected by social media, but I think that they have more tools for dealing with it than we ever give them credit for. They are more capable of going, oh, this person's being mean, block. Oh, this is a toxic social media platform. I'm going to a different social media platform. Oh, all of the parents are here. Time to find a new one. And what I have seen out of social media is kids that previously felt completely alone that aren't quite. That maybe their friend is somebody that they play video games with that they've never met, or maybe their friend is somebody at a different school that they have met, but they only really get to see once in a while, and they wouldn't know it all if it weren't for social media and the fact that they were in a Magic the Gathering card group on social media or a comic book group or whatever. I think we only talk about the predatorial relationships that come about through social media. And I don't necessarily think that they're the majority. I think that there's something that we should be wary of and we should have kids be wary of. But like, I worry about the kid that like being able to check in with their friend that's in a different class is what keeps them going through school. And now they're not allowed to have their phone.
If I could add there, Ted, is it's a double-edged sword, the social media part with in dealing with depression, because at one side, like yeah, you can see how is it a tool? Is it something that can damage or exasperate an underlying, issues already? Of course, just like anything else. The problem is that, I'm what am I, Generation X? So when we were young, we didn't have cell phones or whatnot. So
Right.
like when you see kids, it's like, oh, you're always on your phone, you're always doing this. And it's like, yeah, but their whole future is going to be built on, being able to use social media and engage and develop better skills and better tech. So it's a part of their lives more than it was part of my life. And so the advice I always talk to parents or say is like, what I have to remind them as well as the children is that the parents feel powerless. So they have to blame something and point at something. So their easiest thing is to go, well, it's the social media. They live on social media. Well, yeah, they do. Part of it, it's true.
When we were
but it's not
kids, it was
necessarily
the
a bad thing.
internet in general.
Like
For our parents, it was
well,
TV.
when I was a kid, it was the beeper. The beeper was bad.
Right.
AOL
The
chat
pager.
rooms, just
It's every generation has something,
Right. I feel like we lost Edgar for a second and
Yeah.
Sam. But yeah, no, I'm pretty certain that there's a generation where it was the radio. The radio is killing
Yeah.
these kids today. Or
That was
or
the
the
jitterbug.
or printed
Elvis.
books. Now everybody can read. It used to be that only people we could trust could read, but now that we got this damn printing press.
Dan Gutenberg. Can you guys hear me?
We lost you for a minute in there. We tried to fill as best we could. You were probably doing much better.
If I could just add this final point on it, is that it's something that we, I think, as clinicians, educators, is teaching and educating parents on the dangers of it, but also the benefits of it. And I think it's maybe we're not teaching them that, hey, finger pointing isn't the answer, the blaming game isn't the answer. It's how do we get our kids to work within that system and still come out of it well. And I think that's
Right.
it's promoting education, promoting, mental health, all that. It's working as a team. It's always about working as a team.
Well, one of my frustrations coming out of the pandemic, and with the pandemic, because there were so many schools that didn't get the help they needed or didn't make the decisions to figure out how to best teach, that just focused on going back rather than, okay, this is the situation we're in, what can we do with it? We only talk about what they lost. And yes, they lost a ton of things and that's important, but I think part of getting it back is also acknowledging the things that they gained. These kids are way more proficient at using something like Zoom. These kids are way more proficient at a lot of collaborative type things in a Google Slides or document setting. These kids are way more appreciative of being able to spend time together. I mean, that was the biggest positive thing I noticed when we came back. I just see so many more high fives and hugs in the hallway than I used to.
Wow. I wish I was
I
at your
don't.
school.
What?
I wish I was at your school.
I like don't wanna. I don't wanna. Like I'm one of the people that's like, no, don't mark them tardy. They're only spending a couple minutes with friends on their way. They're not missing anything. And maybe that's just my school. I mean, I know I'm at a ridiculously privileged school. The pandemic, not only did we immediately switch to Zoom, but like I was talking with somebody recently about like because she had a wonderful ocean background, which was an ocean background. But during the pandemic, our big thing as teachers was we'd have to ask the students, so is that a background or is that the view out your window, right? Because more times than not, it was the view out their window. But that's had its own, because I'll also say that like pre-pandemic, I had a bunch of really privileged kids that knew they were privileged and bent over backwards to give back and be responsible about that privilege. And post-pandemic, I've got a lot of privileged kids that don't have that same self-awareness. And I wonder how much of it is they got spoiled because the world fell apart and their parents didn't know what to do. So they just cushioned them from it. You know.
I think kids are always adaptive to their environment. And one of the things that I've seen in working with kids, I work primarily with elementary school K-5 now, but I have also worked with preteens, and they are really, really adept at creating a mask of a persona online.
Oh, God.
And one of the things that I really appreciate about Zoe's book is there is that mask that she has that is the blank, very minimal detail of just single thin lines holding it all together. And
Right.
what was really interesting for me was that when she got off the plane, she was wearing that mask in order to see this guy that she really liked. And she kept that mask on. And for a few pages, she took the mask off and had her face there while she was talking about that experience with Angel, which
Yeah.
was, really a traumatic time for
Powerful.
her. And then immediately, like the day after mask is back on, it felt like the perfect visualization of a vulnerability hangover.
Hmm.
I don't know if anyone else felt the same.
Definitely. I thought that was wonderful. And, there were times throughout the book where her real face would pop through, but they were so rare. And I thought it was a wonderful device.
I don't want to interpret the crap out of everything, but when you think about the thin lines and the lack of detail, it really shows the frailty, the vulnerability, i.e., the weakness, the lack of identity, and that's why you see the next day her identity came back. She had thicker lines, stronger detail to it. So she was back, and that's the beauty of the artwork is that you saw those different phases of her where was her different mood and different feelings coming out in picture form. Is that you saw the weakness, then you saw she gets that moment of like, I'm okay, I just met him, now we're talking, we're doing good, and then it's like, uh-oh, but now this is happening, and the mask comes back. So that was the beauty of her art, is that you can see her weakness and her strengths vacillating through her art, and that's pretty cool.
I found the page that absolutely haunted me. I mean, there are many, but the one that it's right after she found out that she wasn't. I'm gonna share the spread really quick. Right after she found out that she wasn't going to be able to go to the US Comic-Con because of the pandemic and reduced travel. And it's got all of the faces. It's got the what do we do? It's all over.
Hmm.
But then what haunts me is the knife that comes back and then the text on the next page. That's the problem with flirting with the idea of something. Sometimes you fall in. And I think overall that's referring to the idea of going to the United States and going to this con and meeting this guy and that sort of thing. But I know for me and my history of suicidal ideation, the thing that's always been most difficult to explain to people around me, people who are close to me, is that it's like a Pandora's box that can never be closed. Once you've considered it as an option, it always pops back into my head. I'm way better at getting away from it now. It's been a long time since I spent even more than a minute or two with it. But, I can't remember a time in my life where there weren't situations, and ironically, as many of them happy situations. It can't get better than this. I don't want to see what comes next. As depressing situations where it will pop up in the middle of everything. I mean, that was the moment in this book that I felt most seen because it's, there's an Ani DeFranco line. They say that alcoholics are always alcoholics, even when they've been dry as my lips for years, even when they're on a small desert aisle 3,000 miles from anywhere to get beer. And I've always felt that about being suicidal, is that kind of like addiction, it's not something that you get over. It's something that you process and you deal with and you continue to process and you continue to I hate saying deal with because that's it feels like it cheapens it. Give me a better word. Somebody, Bryce, you're a writer. Give me a good word.
You
You're on your
could
own.
say carry or hold.
Carry a little bit. But I mean, if you're doing things right every day, you get better at it. Certainly every year you get better at it. But
Maybe you
I'm
learn how
also
to sit with
blessed.
it.
Yeah, you get to sit with it. You get to cope with it. You build strategies. You stress the muscle. That's kind of what therapy is. It's a safe place to work out the muscles that you need in a crisis. That's become my new favorite teaching thing when people are saying, why do I need to know this? Well, you're a wrestler, right? Do you spend time in the weight room? Do you do bench presses when you're wrestling? No, but it helps me. I'm like, okay. So no, you're never going to do this algebra problem, but you're working that muscle and you will use those problem solving skills. So you need to keep that muscle strong.
I feel like I would have paid attention more in math class had I heard that.
I try. Edgar, Sam, do you have any thoughts? I mean, you guys deal with this professionally. Do we get better or do we get better at dealing with it?
I think the way you worded it was good. It's something that you grow and develop. You do carry it with you
Develop,
your
that's a
whole.
word I like. Bryce, why couldn't you come up with that? You're the writer.
A really long word.
It's 3 syllables, man.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
It took me a while to come up with that word. Trust me, I Googled.
It's excellent.
I think I think it's important to understand that there's when you look at like diagnostically, like what is depression? Like there's different types of depression diagnostically where it's like, is it a single episode, like single depressive episode? Is it major depression? Is it, is it something that you're going through grief? Is it something that you're going through bereavement? Like, is it something
Dysthymia,
like,
melancholic,
yeah, like it's
lifelong.
there's some things
Bipolar, baby.
yeah, like it doesn't present the same for everyone. The treatment doesn't work the same for everyone. Some people come in very short term, they work through it and they're like, all right, I'm done. I got the tools, I can do it at home. Like physical therapy, I went in for a couple
Right.
sessions, I learned the stretches, and now I can go home and I can do them myself. But for a lot of people,
And you cross your fingers that they're right.
Yeah. I'm like, who are these
it's-
people? They're
I mean, I will
amazing.
say that like my therapist thanks me from time to time because I've had the same therapist for, see, I'm 44. I saw him for the first time when I was 14. So I've had the same
Whoa.
therapist for 30 years now.
Oh my God.
Um,
That's a relationship.
I mean, I've had a handful of other therapists, but like the rule, even when I saw other therapists because he was too far away and it was before Zoom or whatnot, was like, you have to understand that I have another therapist. If you have an ethical problem with that, if you're not willing to work with him, blah, 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 then you're the wrong therapist for me because he's going to be able to do in a session what you do in a month.
Yeah, it's
But he said like what he gets out of it, the reason that he would, because there were times where I was broke and he's like, we'll work out payment. Don't even worry about it. If you needed to meet. He's like, yeah, no, we don't see the end of our stories very often. I've gotten to see you develop over 30 years. I've gotten to see it go from the teenager that I hoped that I saw for his next session to the grandfather that like I'm just happy to talk to because you've got such a great worldview on this or that, and that's something that I mean, one of the things I love about this book, even and books like it, even when they don't bring up therapy, I definitely love it more when therapy is brought up. And like totally missed it until the therapist pointed out, hey, she never sees a therapist.
Do we know, like, I really don't, is there a difference in the culture of therapy in England versus America, or is it essentially
I think there's a lot of similarities. I think it's a little bit more available because of national health, but I think there's real similarities in terms of the stigma.
Mm.
The teachers are the same. We all read the same theorists. We start with Freud,
Right.
Piaget. Yeah, it's the same, similar approaches.
Right. And half of what I know comes from comic books. I've read lots of mental health stories in comic books. So I know France seems to have some. I read a great book called Transitions recently, where it's a biologist mom like working through and supporting her child in a through a gender transition. And apparently in France, she was not only able to find a therapist to work with her, but a therapist who had like expertise in
Wow.
helping the families
It's growing.
of LBGTQ. And it's like, I mean, yeah, I say this in lots of contexts, but mental health is actually a really important one. One of the reasons I wish we had national health is because then you could vote on changes. They wouldn't have to be driven by, is there a profit to be had here?
Yeah.
If we wanted to have more people who could do things, we could make it a legislative priority. That, I'm not saying that legislatures work fast. I'm not saying that it would be an overnight fix, but as long as it's for profit, it doesn't matter how much of a legislative priority something is. You're not actually going to be able to make it happen unless there are enough people who need it to make it profitable. And certain things just feel profitable enough from a societal standpoint.
Yeah.
That it shouldn't be about.
Yeah. We all benefit from people having mental health resources, right? I mean,
right.
Society benefits from it in so many ways. It's reductive when people are like, well, we spend this money and it's a waste. It's not. Just because you can't see every positive result from something like that, from putting money into something like that, doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right.
There's a clear need. I mean, just look at the homelessness problem in this country.
Yeah.
And the percentage of people who are homeless that also are dealing with mental health issues. Like, it's not that tricky to see that we could do something that would make life better for everyone, not just people who are struggling.
Yeah. Well, and if we break down the stigma, I mean, I'm a big believer that like almost everybody could benefit from seeing a therapist a couple of times a year, particularly if and this is something that for-profit medicine has made more difficult too, but like when you have a good general practitioner that you see once a year or a couple of times a year, or a dentist that you see once a year or a couple of times a year, they will see things that you haven't seen yet, and you get to start fixing them before their problems.
So true.
Before their problems. Why can't we take mental health that seriously?
I've been in the field going on 30 years. Oh my God, I'm getting old. I can honestly say, just that I've seen it change, and that these new generations are more comfortable speaking and talking about mental illness than they were, in the 70s and 80s. Like, they are more comfortable putting it out there, and so there's hope in that. These are the kids that are going to go into it. They're going to be the leaders of our country, and that you would hope that if they're more comfortable in speaking to it, they're going to be more comfortable in fighting for it and changing paradigms.
I hope so.
I keep my hope, and that I see.
I do too. Because I've been seeing the same thing. But on the flip side, then you see the old man establishment politician like dig in even harder on, oh no, the kids like it. It's bad.
Well, Zoe does weigh in on it a little bit. She actually does go to therapy just
Ah,
like for one page.
That's right.
Oh,
Right.
That was she conceptualizes the therapist as a snake, though. And so I'm curious the meaning
How,
for her behind that. If
well,
how offended did this call get?
that can be hard. This is one of those things where like, and I think it's another thing that's getting better than it was 20 years ago. But I used to have friends who'd say, "Oh, I went to therapy. It didn't work for me." It's like, well, try another therapist.
Hmm.
Therapists are not one size fits all.
I
Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I don't know. My headphones just died. Perfect timing. So I don't know how I'm like how much different I sound, but no, Tad, it's interesting that you talk about that because it's something I've thought about a lot, that it's like two things. Like, so when I was like 17 was the first time I started going to therapy, but it was very hush hush in our family and not completely addressed. But, you know, especially being a girl in the late 90s, early aughts, it's very easy to get labeled crazy when you start doing therapy or talking about it and having to go on meds. And so I was always very quiet about it. But I gained one of my closest friends I still have to this day. And we both kind of figured out, like, oh, so you go to therapy too. And it's like we would kind of scurry off and like talk about it together. Where we just couldn't talk with other friends for probably another 15 years about it. But I am definitely happy to see that kids are able to talk about it and just be aware of it more than when I was in high school, you know, using Yahoo to kind of look up different things like depression and like learning about bipolar and stuff like that.
God,
But
Yahoo.
it is very, it is very nice to see kids have accessibility to that. But I got to tell you, it was really, really awesome once the whole wave of friends that I had that were like, therapy is not something that I need. That's something that other people need. And once those people started going to therapy, it was like fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Because we could just open up and talk to each other, and not immediately, but over the years, open up much more. And especially as we got older and have much better, like much more realistic conversations and able to like really check in with each other in a way that we couldn't before. So it's kind of like for the younger kids, I'm kind of like, oh, this is nice just to like have this reinforcement and positivity at least around it to start, rather than have to find that 20 years later.
I think we're getting more of that.
You know what's
I think
funny is usually when kids, like when we see high schoolers and they're seniors and they graduate, we typically lose them as clients because they're like, well, we're off to college, like see you later. But I've been seeing more and more as they are leaving to college, like they're like, well, could we do Zoom like once a month, like just, you know, just to check in and have that conversation. I've seen a lot of our high schoolers now going off to college and continuing at least at the very least once a month, if not every other month, as they're in their dorms, you know, as they're like in between classes, you know, checking in with their therapist. I'm not saying every kid does it, but it's definitely been an increase, and it's nice to see that they know. And I mean, telehealth wasn't really available
yeah.
until like a couple years ago.
Well,
Because of
this is one of the few positives out of the pandemic is like, oh, we don't have to find a way to be in the same room.
Mhm.
For sure.
One of the things that I was curious about, especially Edgar, if you have any experience with this. So it has been a positive that we're seeing more young people being open to talking about mental illness. At the same time, it seems like there's a lot of self-diagnosis going on online and a lot of reinforcement and positive feedback from taking on a mental illness as an identity.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking of the TikTok trends where people are
Take what?
filming their tics that they, maybe it's a little more
He
performative.
he was jumping in with a dad joke.
Oh,
Yeah.
go
Take
ahead.
what?
You tasked
Yes.
me with a job, and I was trying to fulfill it. I think that's a great question, because it's something that it's funny because I've been in the field long enough to see both sides. I still get the parents that go, "There's no such thing as ADHD. That it was never around in my day." I'm like, "Well, how old are you?" I was born in 1970. I'm like, "Well, no, it's because it was called something else. That's why." So
Right.
you still see both sides, but yes, definitely, you see a lot of individuals who are taking an identity of their mental illness. From spectrum disorders to oh, I'm neurodivergent, and like they're owning it. But I I try to always stay positive in how they understand their world. Is that you know, if they're willing to own their illness, I think that's a great step. That's a wonderful thing, and more power to them. The problem is you're right, is that they're getting reinforcement and hearing things that may not be accurate and true, and then just taking these labels and taking away from kids that truly do have it, and owning that. So there is it's another double-edged sword. It's like you have to take the good with the bad at some level. But the way I always tell parents, I go, look, you know what? I'm glad that you're willing to bring your kid in. Your kid thinks that they have it. I'm like, this is the thing that we do, is that's why we assess children. We give them tests. Like it's, pediatricians or other people sometimes just like, oh, you ask a child, are you ADHD? Yeah, I don't pay attention. I have difficulty concentrating. All right, let me give you this med. But if you ever sit down with a parent, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna answer this question in a lengthy way, so I apologize.
No, not
If
at
you
all.
No.
ever ask a child and a parent and go, well, what's the difference between concentration and attention? Can you define the difference? Can you define the difference between focus, concentration, and attention? And they never do. Rarely have I ever seen anybody do it. And then I go, then how do you know you can't do it if you can't define what it is? I'm like, so I always tell parents, I'm like, why don't you bring them in and we'll actually give you a neuropsych eval and actually evaluate you to see if you even meet that minimum criteria. I'm like, I'm not one for just, well, you ask some questions and yes, you have it, because I can answer questions all day long. It doesn't mean that they're right. My kids can answer questions. It doesn't mean that they're right. And sometimes kids, believe it or not, are influenced by parents. And the parent goes, "Oh, you never listen." The kid's going to go in the office and say, "Yeah, I have problems listening." Like, do you, or do you just not want to listen to your mother and father? That's two different things, buddy.
Right.
It's, and we all went through that. So it's about assessment. So I always say, like, you know what? If they think they have it, they're owning it, great. Let's have them assess. Now, this whole TikTok thing, I'm going to be honest. I don't have social media, so I don't know too much how all that stuff works. I know Sam does it. We do the psychocomicolgy on it. She manages it because it doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know how they do it. And I'm at the age where it's probably too late for me to even try to learn it. But I try to stay focused on that. Hey, if it brings somebody to talk about it and it brings somebody to my door where I can at least educate you, then I'll go with it. Does it come with some bad? That's all right. Music came with bad. TV came with bad. Cars come with bad. Everything comes
Right.
with it. Just a matter, can I use
There's
it?
there's yeah, I don't think there's an advancement in the world that's 100% good or bad. Um, I want to, it's not quite a counterpoint. I want to build off of that and get your thoughts, Edgar. Because you mentioned that they called it something else, or they didn't call it anything. I was at a panel at C2E2 this year with Jenny Wood, who did a book called, I think, Paper Planes. And one of the things she talked about is that, like, she figured out that she was a lesbian in her 20s because she definitely wasn't like what everybody expected her to be, and this seemed closer. Didn't quite feel right, but it was closer than that whole "I like guys" thing. And it wasn't until she was in like her 30s and there started being trans people that she's like, oh. But even then, she's like, well, I don't really. Wasn't until like she heard the term non-binary that she's like, oh no, that feels like a shoe that fits. Um, so when it comes to self-diagnosis and ownership, and I agree that it's good to follow up with the diagnosis. Though I will say that there are certain diagnoses that, particularly as adults, I mean, I don't have an official autism spectrum diagnosis because as an adult to get one would complicate my life more than it would help it because I certainly don't have severe enough autism that I would be eligible for, say, disability or anything like that. But if I had it on paper that it was something that I am, it might affect my ability to maintain my bus license or whatever. Um, but identifying it in myself, having it confirmed by people who could diagnose me, but we haven't gone through the tests, has made me understand myself better. It has made me more comfortable in who I am and where I am. So can you talk about um I guess the benefits versus the dangers of being able to find yourself in a diagnosis? Because I can absolutely imagine dangers, but I have an active, horrible imagination. So I would rather that you put out any of the imaginary dangers than me, because I might go to the nth degree.
So I can say I'll do a quick one. Is that I think you said it best. There's nothing new, no new tech that doesn't have a danger to it. We are not immune to that as well as clinicians, as doctors. Is that it's a double-edged sword as well because and I hate to say it, but I'll be blunt because sometimes I am blunt. Look, if you have the money, you can pay anybody to write you a diagnosis to give you the diagnosis that you need to get more time on the test. Um,
Hmm.
so yes, it does exist. It does happen. Uh, and that's the dangers to it. Thankfully we have EMRs now that, electronic medical records that we can see like, hey, you've been to 5 different doctors and you got 4 same diagnosis, and then this one is different. How did that happen? So there is some systems in place. It's not perfect, but we have some systems. But yeah, there is it is a double-edged sword in that, there's the danger of that. There's the danger of clinicians who, believe it or not, there's some therapists that what's the word I can say? Suck. And are are
Thank you.
more of a danger than they are a help. I
Mm.
definitely see that. Like they're not, we're not all the same. I can tell you that. But that's the double-edged sword. You wanted to say something.
I think circling back to like the TikTok and like the self-diagnosis, for as smart as these kids are when it comes to utilizing technology, they forget or they don't understand that there's something called an algorithm, in which the videos that they watch are going to be the only videos then that they get, which then can be a good thing because it's knowledge being spread across the globe, and we're receiving new information and we're able to access things that we were never able to access before. But once you hit a certain part in that algorithm, you're only going to get the things that the algorithm thinks that you're going to like to continue to be on TikTok, so that you spend more time on TikTok, so TikTok gets more money because it's feeding you exactly the things that it knows you're interested in and the things that you want to see.
Is that why I only get food videos that
That's why you
month?
only get only food and carbs.
Interesting.
So I think that's the dangerous thing with kids, is that for as smart as they are for the utilization of technology, there's some things that maybe they don't know, or they're not grasping the concept of how, this algorithm is affecting them. And it might be validating a misdiagnosis.
Mm.
There's so many times that I get kids coming in for intakes and they've basically recited the whole DSM to me. And I'm like, you memorized, like, I know
That's
you
too much of the DSM.
right. I know this is
Too
word
many
for
symptoms.
word. You're 15. I know you don't know this word. Like,
Hey,
and they're
I
repeating
might
it.
have, Sam. I read the dictionary before I was 15.
Okay,
Like, read the dictionary.
I'm not saying every kid, but I'm saying there's some kids and I'm like, I know you didn't know this word. Like, I know you were in
If
the car on the way up here, sitting in the back seat, looking this up.
Honestly, I feel like the fact that I read the dictionary probably could have been used in my diagnosis.
Probably. Yep, I would definitely give that indication.
And you're asking me for words.
I didn't say I remembered them.
Just a light read.
Mhm.
I mean, what does Hannity say? We're supposed to do our own research.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
One of the things that struck me right at the end was when Zoe said, "You know why you're not happy? You don't want to be."
Mm.
And that to me sounded like the danger of self-identifying with your illness. And, there's the part of depression that, especially in relation to trauma, tells the brain, okay, I'm very familiar with this emotion, so this emotion feels like home. Really this mood, if we're being technical. But then the risk, I guess, of getting better is if I do feel better, this could go away, this feeling could go away. And where am I then? And what I was really curious about was, if I feel good, am I not a loser anymore? Because that takes me out of that group that I had formed a bond with. And does that mean I'm the villain? Because she drew the people who were bullying her as villains, which, rightfully so, if they're, making fun of her. At the same time, I could easily see how, especially as a kid, you would think, well, these bullies feel good about themselves. So if I feel good about myself, does that mean I'm a bully? I don't know. What's your take?
I can always respond, but I'm waiting. I feel like
I'll add to that, because I know that the single hardest part, because I actually I related to her, and I didn't read it poorly, because one of the things that I'll sometimes say to my wife when she'll be like, well, it's not that easy, is no, it's not that easy, but it is that simple. Because so much of my mental health journey has been ultimately deciding to change things, deciding to go outside my comfort zone and be happy, deciding to go outside of my comfort zone and go, oh, this person likes me. They like to spend time with me. I'm just going to accept that, rather than assuming there's something wrong with them, because why on earth would they want to spend time with me? Hell, this podcast challenges me that way. Sometimes I have 5 people right here that, like, 10 years ago, it's like, no, I'm not cool enough. You shouldn't like me. When is the shoe going to drop? I should just run away now, because that way I won't get hurt. So there is this huge element, at least for me, of being willing to own responsibility. So for me, it's not, I mean, part of it is the whole, oh, the reason I feel terrible is I don't want to not feel terrible. In that there's comfort here, but part of it is also, if I don't want to feel terrible, I have to decide that I don't want to feel terrible. I can't hope that the world will change. I can't hope that my boyfriend will do better, or that my parents will suddenly become everything that I always wanted them to be, and beg my forgiveness for all of the things that they did wrong, that they probably didn't even think they did wrong, and they might not have done wrong, because, Rashomon effect, my view of it, their view of it, completely different, and I don't know what they were going through in their lives, blah, blah, blah. Or I can say, I'm the one that can decide how I'm going to feel.
if I can just respond to that too as well. Great question you point out. So it's twofold. So I'm going to try to organize my thought, because, I mean, while I'm not depressed, I am an ADHD brain here. So
Have you been diagnosed, Dr. Ramos?
yes, yes, I have actually
Self-diagnosed, or
several
did you go
times.
to another doctor?
Uh, not all the time. So what we're asking is the why. The first part is the why, and that's where we sometimes forget is that sometimes, and clinicians are guilty of it, people are sometimes are guilty of it, is that why you're depressed, or why you're anxious. It's like there is no why, because there's different forms of depression. There's organic depressions that are definitely medically based, and then there's situational depressions or environment. So there's a different why. So there's one part to it. Irregardless of that, or with that in mind, is that you got to remember that when throughout our development, if we have whatever disease, disorder, mental illness, whatever you want to frame it as, it integrates with our personality. Our intelligence integrates with our personality. So imagine you having this long-standing depression, and if you had it at very meaningful times in your life, that has become a part of who you are. Now you go somewhere and someone says, let's get rid of that. They're asking you, and there's a part of you, deep down in your brain, that you're giving up a part of who you are, a part of how you've dealt with everything. And you don't, that's a scary thing to do, is that, I've only
Terrifying.
known how to isolate when I'm scared or things go wrong. I've only known how to, do this. I've only known how to lash out. I've only known to cry. It's like now it's saying, well, let's take that away and do something different. So I tend not to ask kids or anymore people like, well, what will make you happy? Because you know what? You know what answer I'm going to get? I don't know. And that's the honest answer, is they don't know, because the next step is fucking scary. I don't know what to do with this anymore. I've been like this. It's who I am. I know it doesn't feel good. Every blue moon, maybe I feel good, but I know I don't. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. So it's that scariness. So for me, the thing isn't always about treating someone and like, all right, let's throw you back into the wild. It's let me at least stabilize you and let you know that what you're feeling, experiencing, it's okay. It's okay to feel shitty, which is what some people don't want to own, is that you can feel shitty. Why? The only way you will ever know to feel good is if you know you felt shitty. You can't have one without the other. My running joke with people is, you know what? Thank this big fat guy when you are thin, because if it wasn't for people like me, you wouldn't know you look good. So you're welcome. So you need that both sides of the spectrum, and that's why I tell kids and adults, like, look, man, you feel bad. It should, it's right. So let's give you a day when you do feel good, and let's focus on that, and let's maintain you here, and then slowly work through it. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but it's a hard thing to do, because one, you have to know the why, and two, it's understanding that, man, changing someone's personality is intertwined at times with their diagnosis, and it's a
Yeah.
hard thing to unweave. It's a super hard thing to unweave.
If I can just emphasize a part of that, I know for me at least, and I've certainly seen it with some of my kids, both at school and my actual kids. When you've developed a coping mechanism that maybe isn't the best coping mechanism, but it's better than no coping mechanism, and suddenly you have to look at letting that go to actually move forward. Whether it's okay, it's time to stop cutting, or I can't even think of examples off the top of my head, but like when in your head you're going, no, this is good for me because I feel way better when I do this than when I don't do this. But you have to trust that therapist is going, yeah, but what comes next? That what comes next is terrifying, because you worked so hard to build that strategy to be able to get out of bed. And now that strategy that's the only reason you got out of bed is an aspect of the problem, but it's also like in your head, it's like how you get out of bed. I mean, the best analogy I can come up with is like, if your doctor said, hey, you just can't use that right leg anymore. I know it seems like it's really convenient, but you can't use that right leg anymore. Your left leg's strong, so hop on it. We'll get you some crutches. Using that right leg, it's gonna kill you. Which obviously is an extreme analogy, but sometimes that's the only kind I can come up with. Bryce, that was a great look. I wish we had a video. I wish we
I know
had
I was going to say.
I wish we were doing a video podcast just for that look.
I know. I do a lot of nodding and stuff. I know it serves no purpose on this podcast.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Uh,
I need to hop off here in a minute, but I would like to thank you for having me come on. This is a really cool podcast. And
I was thinking about it today. I certainly want to do one on mental health at least once a year now, and maybe more often, just because it is such an important topic. And in trying to find a way to kind of promote on Instagram while at the same time not centering Zoe while she's going through everything that she's going through, I wound up finding all sorts of other books that could be used as the center of the conversation on. And I'm like, oh, we could really easily do this regularly.
Yeah, I saw it in that graphic. I was like, oh, I own half of these books.
Yeah. Which is Bryce.
Oh yeah, I what I'm actually working on writing right now is about my job and I'm trying to do fiction, but that really
fantastic.
expresses what it's like to work with kids with some real mental health needs in a public school setting when we don't have the resources we need to help these kids most of the time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I would love, once I get it written and get it put together, to come on and talk about that as well.
Please. And if you want a proofreader before then, I will be happy to just look at stuff.
Yeah, this crew seems like a good sounding board for the script. So
I was gonna say I would love to see that. I think that'd be really interesting.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
And for that matter, our two guests that weren't able to make it, I'll vouch for as good sounding boards too.
Yeah. It's just turned into a workshop.
We'll workshop your book with you, Bryce.
Okay. In a few months, I will be in touch.
I think this is actually a relatively good wrap-up point. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Anything they want to say?
Love the book.
I did.
I do love. I actually got it through the Challengers Comics and Conversation sale. They recommended it, and I saw it, and I was like, "Yep, absolutely throwing this in the pile."
For a while, and I forgot to check before this, but Challengers in Chicago was hosting a monthly mental health book club that the local chapter of NAMI was sponsoring. So that made me happy. I actually discovered that through NAMI at C2E2 a couple of years ago. I looked at their flyer. I'm like, oh, at Challengers, I love those guys. then thanked Patrick and Dal for doing it when I was in the next time. I like that mental health is. I mean, I think I don't think you have more. I don't think any medium has more biography, autobiography, fiction dedicated to just mental health stories than comics does. Like for movies and TV, you generally have to be famous or whatnot to have a biography or an autobio. In comics, you can just have a story to tell. And I think that's really cool. I think it helps a lot of people feel seen.
I think what sticks with me is that each page of this book was a choice, day after day after day, of intentionality, of moving forward with a purpose, in a really, in a way that is open and raw and I think anyone who reads this that comes across, like you said, about page 2.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a brave book. It's brave, for her to express like all this depth of her depression and her struggles. And I, like we said before, I'm rooting for her. I hope she's okay, and I hope she's getting the help she needs, and that she continues to create wonderful work for a long, long time.
Been following her Instagram, particularly since her brother passed, and she seems to be okay. Feels like the wrong word to use because she just lost her brother, but she seems to be healthy. I will actually, Bryce was mentioning earlier that this book shows that she could do anything. And in this book, she talked about her 2 other books, The Impending Blindness of Billy, I forget the last name, which is phenomenal, amazing. Everybody should read it. And she also worked on Joe Hill's Rain, which she did amazing work on. Then the book that she did after this, she became the first person that got to both write and illustrate a hack slash book without Tim Seeley. So she got to do like the I'm trying to remember the name of the girl, and Cass and Vlad at like the slasher hunter boarding school. It's like their origin story. And man, did she have some fun with that.
That's cool.
So I recommend picking that up. Hack slash Back to School, I think it was called. It's collected now. So I think Zoe's going to be okay. But yeah, no, I feel it. And Megan, I feel bad because, the 2 that we've had you on so far were this one and Jim Terry's Come Home Indios. So like, we'll have to have you on to talk about a happy book sometime.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. Mental health is close to my heart. I studied psychology. I have a master's in that. And it's an important conversation to have. So anytime. And if we want to talk about happy things, we can do that too.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. All right. Psychocomicolgy, last notes.
I think books like this are important, not only for others to tell their stories, but also for people to gather around to dialogue and discuss, our opinions and what makes us think and have important conversations that are sometimes really hard to have.
Yeah. Well, I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And for 22 panels, we will see you after the next page.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode, you guys. And again, I want to encourage people to support organizations that promote mental health awareness and assistance. Thanks. Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22panelspodcast.